Hello, my name is Jonathan Clark from Canada, also known as DJ Bolivia, and today I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview about USB-based microphones. Now, in one of my earlier tutorials, I started to talk about microphones, and I think that was audio recording tutorial number 1, I presume. I'll find it, I'll put a link to it here on the screen right now. Anyway, if you don't know much about microphones, it might be worthwhile to go back and take a look at that before you watch this. Or watch this and then go take a look at that. Because I did talk about microphones in much more depth in that video than I'm going to today. But in that video I mentioned that USB-based microphones did exist and that I didn't really know much about them. So I kind of skimmed over them. And I still haven't actually used one yet, but I've done a ton of research into them, and everything that I've heard has generally been quite positive. So there's been a lot of advances in technology, obviously, in the last 10 or 20 years, and basically home recording technology is just phenomenal now. It's comparable to what some of the better studios had 20 years ago. So in terms of microphones, normally there's two different types of mics. There's a type called dynamic mics, and here's a couple of Shure dynamic mics, and the second type that's common is called a condenser mic. And there's other types of mics too, but those are the two main categories. And in general, a dynamic mic is a little bit more robust, usually cheaper, a little bit more durable. A dynamic mic would be a good all-purpose microphone for recording instruments or vocals. Now, a condenser mic, usually a little bit more expensive, a little bit better quality, they will pick up background noise much more easily. So if you're in a situation where you're, say, recording a guitar in a studio and you're using a dynamic mic, it's going to pick up stuff close to the microphone well, but as you get further away, you get background noises like floors creaking and radiators and stuff like that. The dynamic mic is not going to pick up that much, whereas the condenser mic will pick up every little thing. Another difference between the two is that a dynamic mic does not need power, it does not need external power. A condenser mic does need external power, and it can either be provided by a battery right inside the microphone sometimes, although much more commonly the power will come in on the cable that the signal cable that the microphone is attached to, and this is called phantom power. So you have to have some sort of console power source, and you have to have your phantom power turned on, feeding that power to the condenser mic for it to work. Differences in terms of recording. A condenser mic is not so great for very loud sounds and very sharp sudden attacks, sharp transients, stuff like that. It's pretty hard on the mic. So if you're going to be recording something like a snare drum where you get that really punchy snap when the stick hits the drum, you're going to want a dynamic mic for that. If you're looking at something like miking a guitar amp for an electric guitar, you're probably more likely to use a dynamic mic for that. But as far as condenser mic goes, you get a little bit more trebly stuff too with condenser mic. I should have mentioned that. So with condenser mic, that might be a good microphone. You know, if you're miking a set of drums in a band, then the drums themselves will maybe each have a dynamic mic on them, but you might have a couple of overhead condenser mics hanging there, and the condenser mics will pick up the overall aura of the room. So anyway, that's the two different types of microphones, and what else do you need to know? A pop filter. Okay, this is a pop filter, and basically when you're recording with a good microphone, you know, the air coming out of your mouth is going to hit that microphone, and it's going to kind of rustle, it's going to make a little bit of extra background noise, and so people use these things called pop filters. It's just a mesh filter, it's very soft, and all that does is it lets the sound go through and hit your microphone, but it stops your breath from hitting the mic so harshly. Okay, so pop filters, it's good to know what those are. So who would use a USB microphone? Well, as it turns out, from what I've read, quite a lot of people. Basically, with the old style microphones, condenser or dynamic mics or whatever, ribbon mics, all sorts of different types. With those, basically your signal is going from the mic through a cord, and in a traditional studio it's probably going into your sound console, your mixing board. If there's a if you're not using a professional mixing board, you might need phantom power for that microphone, so you might have to go through a phantom power supply first and then into your recording equipment. Depending on the setup you're using, you may need a mic preamp, and this is important to know because any of these microphones, the signal level that they put out is much lower than what's known as a line level signal. So in order for your recording equipment to pick up the sound properly, that signal needs to be boosted. So if you're feeding a microphone signal into a recording situation, into some sort of equipment, it's not going to be patched into the same sort of thing as a CD player or as a guitar from a DI box or something like that, because those are all much louder, higher signals, line level signals, and so for those mics you need that preamp to boost the power. So a lot of professional mixers, consoles, obviously have mic preamps built into each channel strip, so that when you see, here's your place to plug in your microphone, your XLR input, whatever, there's a mic preamp inside the board taking care of all that stuff. But in some situations, if you're recording directly to a laptop, you won't have that mic preamp. And so if you've got a dynamic mic and you're going directly into a laptop, not through a sound card, say you're going through a sound card, whatever, either way, that signal has to go through a preamp. So your sound card has to have a preamp, or if you've got some sort of interface which isn't really a proper external sound card, you're going to need a little box, like a mic preamp box. If you're using a condenser mic, you're going to need to have the preamp, but you're also going to need to have that phantom power. Okay, and so a lot of sound cards, like if we're talking about my Focusrite sound card right here, it's got the mic preamps, it's got the phantom power in that sound card. So in a situation like that, my microphone sends the signal out, goes through the cord into the sound card, then from the sound card into the computer. Now if you're recording like that, one small drawback is there may be some latency. There's almost certainly going to be some latency. And latency is a very, very brief, hopefully not very noticeable, delay in the transit of the signal through the whole system. So it can be a little bit tricky, because if your signal is going from your mic into your sound card, and then the sound card processes it, and then it goes from the sound card via USB or FireWire or something into your computer, and then the computer has the audio recording software on it, the DAW, Digital Audio Workstation Software, and then that does the processing, and then let's say that it has to go back out to your sound card, and then you've got headphones hooked up to the sound card so you can hear what's going on. So in that entire long signal path, you're going to get some latency, you're going to get a little bit of delay. And that can be really annoying in some systems, especially with older equipment or older computers, because what will happen is you'll play a note on your guitar or play a note on your keyboard or say something into your mic, and there's actually a noticeable delay before it comes back to you in your headphones. And that's really tough for recording. Now, some systems mitigate this problem by having what's called direct monitoring. And so instead of, once that signal hits your sound card, perhaps your headphones can directly monitor what's going into the sound card, and so it doesn't have to take that extra time to be processed by the sound card, go out to the computer, computer processes it, sends it back, whatnot. So direct monitoring is very useful. But one thing that we're going to learn here today is that some USB microphones have direct monitoring built in right off the microphone itself. And if that's the case, you're going to have zero latency, and that's awesome. It doesn't take very much latency. If we're talking about even a 10 millisecond delay going through a system, that's noticeable. If you start getting delays of more than 10 milliseconds and you're working on audio production, dance music production, whatever, that kind of a delay is noticeable enough that you're probably going to want to start shifting your audio very subtly up on the timeline. So you can imagine most, I've seen some systems recently where latency is down to 4, 5, 6 milliseconds, which is phenomenal. But even 3 or 4 years ago, it was pretty common to see systems with 200, 300 milliseconds of latency, a third of a second. So, you can't deal with recording easily if you're dealing with that kind of latency. So, there is one of the first advantages of having a USB mic monitoring directly off the microphone. Not all microphones, not all USB mics can do this, but some can. So that's going to be one thing you're going to look for. Now, as far as USB mics go, like I said, I haven't used one. I'm going to be using it extensively in the next couple of weeks. But I have talked to a lot of my friends who are studio producers, studio engineers, and the word is that these can actually be quite good quality, especially if you're comparing them to very basic mass market low-end microphones, the traditional microphones. The quality you can get from one of these is now on par or sometimes better than those situations. And when you're looking at a traditional microphone, you don't have to think about just the mic itself. You have to think about all the different parts, the sound card, the computer that's processing everything. So you have to kind of look at the weak link in the system, and you have to look at the cumulative effect of different pieces of equipment. So USB mics can have good points there. The one that I'm going to open up here today is made by a manufacturer called Blue, and there's quite a few microphone manufacturers that have dived into the USB arena. There's Blue, there's MXL, there's Shure, there's Audio-Technica, there's Rode, there's Apogee, so all kinds of them out there. And just as there's a lot of different manufacturers, there's a lot of different models too. For instance, Blue right now probably has 7, 8, 9 different models. We'll take a look quickly at their website here in a minute. So there's lots of different microphones out there. Now you're probably, if you're interested in trying one of these out, you're probably thinking, what's the best mic? And can I tell you that with any authority? No. But what I can do is point you out. I saw a really nice review done. Lauren Dragan. She did a review on different USB condenser mics, and she did that with a panel of other. I mean, she's pretty competent. She's got a very musical background, and she brought in some of her associates, also studio people and stuff like that. So a group of them got together, reviewed a whole bunch of microphones. And I'll put the link to her article in the text description underneath this YouTube video and in the blog posting. But basically, the stuff that she did, the research that she did, they recorded some of their tests and put them on SoundCloud. So you should check out that article. It's a really good article. And if you're curious, she recommended the Blue mic. The Yeti mic by Blue. Yeti by Blue, I think is what they usually call it. So, anyway, what else do you have to know? Not every USB mic is going to be the same. So when you're comparing mics, you're going to want to look at different features to decide what's best for you. Now, in terms of price, USB mics run from, say, $50 for low-end mic to $300 or $400 for some of the high-end mics. So obviously a lot of variety in that range. The things that you'll have to look at, some of them need drivers installed, some of them plug-and-play driverless microphones. That might be an important consideration. You'll have to look at the need for, you won't need to worry about preamps and you won't need to worry about phantom power with a USB microphone, so that's a huge advantage. The headphone direct with no latency, that's an advantage. Some of these mics have a gain control on the microphone, so that will adjust the signal level being sent out into your computer, so that's a benefit. Not all of them do, but some do. Quite a few of them have multiple pickup patterns, so if you understand how microphones work, like for instance, this one maybe has, say, cardioid, hypercardioid, and omnidirectional. That's not actually what it has, I'm just speculating here. We'll look at the specs. Actually, I think this one has cardioid, omnidirectional, stereo, and one other. I think there's 4 different patterns on this one. So different USB mics will have different patterns available. The ones that have the headphones that can plug into the microphone will often have a volume control, which is nice. Some of them may have a mix control for monitoring, for direct monitoring. So what that'll mean is you can adjust the volume of your own signal, your own vocals, relative to that of a mix coming in. I'll have to think about how that works exactly, but I do know some of them have monitoring mix controls. A few of the higher end ones have the option for XLR output, so they're like a traditional studio mic. They could be used in a traditional studio setting. They don't have to be used as a USB mic. Some of them come with stands. Some of them you don't need your pop filter. They have a pop filter built in. And some of them have variable sampling rates. Yeah, so we'll look at that when we look at the Blue website here in a minute. So let me stop talking about this stuff. Let's look at the websites, look at the Blue website for a few minutes, skim through a couple of the things that they have, and then we'll open the box up and see what we've got. Okay, so here we are on the Blue Microphones website, bluemic.com, that's mic.com, and you can see there's lots of options. We're going to go into desktop USB, and you can see they've got several different brands here. The Yeti Pro, that's one of their better ones. The Yeti, that's their all-around, that's a highly recommended mic, best value for price. Spark Digital, that's the one that I've got here, another high-end one. There's the Nessie, the Snowball Ice, and then there's some accessories down here. So let's look at these quickly. I've already checked the prices on these too, and so I will give you the American prices as of when I checked today from Amazon. So, USB microphones, Yeti Pro. What's this one say? The world's first USB microphone combining 24-bit and 192 kilohertz digital recording resolution. Well, if you've watched my audio recording tutorial about sampling, then you probably know my thoughts about the fact that highly rated recording specs like 192 kilohertz, 32-bit stuff like that are perhaps a little bit excessive. Anyway, I won't get into that today. I'll put a link here on the video in case you want to learn more about that. 24-bit recording, that's great. That's perfect. That's what you're going to get in a decent high-end studio. 192 kilohertz, that's probably more than you will ever need. Look, here it says, captured digital audio with up to 4 times the clarity found on CDs. Well, that's kind of, I don't like that wording. Anyway, this is definitely a good high-end microphone. This one on Amazon today, $188 US. So it's one of the most expensive ones as far as the Blue USB mics goes. It has 3 condenser caps in it, 4 different pattern settings. So let's look at the specs. So we have sample rate 192, that's more than you need. Bit rate 24, that's awesome. 3 proprietary condenser caps. Polar patterns, cardioid, bidirectional, omnidirectional, stereo. Okay, there you go. Frequency response, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So that's the same as humans' range of hearing. at the very optimum. That's pretty much the best that most humans could ever hope for. And as you get older, your hearing range decreases, especially at the high end. So, you know, people that are 50 years old, it's pretty common for them not to be able to hear anything above 15 kilohertz. So, anyway. Maximum sound pressure level, 120 decibels. You don't want to be playing sounds louder than that into the microphone. But at the same time, that's pretty loud. I can't see why you'd be trying to record anything louder than that. That's like rock concert loud, chainsaw loud, jet airplane. Headphone amp, so you can plug your headphones into this. Frequency response for the headphones, 15 hertz to 22 kilohertz. Is that good? Well, that's more than most humans can hope to hear for. But that's better. That's a bigger range than what most humans have. So that's fine. Is that the highest range? Well, that's probably better than the headphones that 80% of you are using, I'm guessing. I use a set of headphones, the Pioneer HDJ 2000 headphones, and their frequency range goes from a low of 5 hertz up to 30,000 hertz. But of course, I can't hear anything down at that low end or up at the high end. So this is great. That's more than you need. Specs, yeah. System requirements. This is interesting. Okay, so this one works off USB 2.0. I don't know if that means that it does not work off USB 3.0. This little audio recorder I have, my Zoom recorder, this only works off USB 2.0. Now my laptop has a couple of USB 2.0 ports on the sides. It has a couple 3.0s in the back. And so if I plug this into the side ports, the 2.0 ports, it works. The computer can talk to it. If I try to plug it into the 3.0 ports, it does not work. So if your computer, your laptop, only has USB 3.0 ports, you want to check this out and make sure that it actually works on your computer before you buy it. Okay? This one also, if you've got an older machine that has USB 1.0 or USB 1.1 ports, I do not believe that will work on this. I'm almost positive. Okay, so that's the Yeti Pro. That one, $188. What's our next option? The Yeti. Okay, this is the one that Lauren recommended as the top overall choice, best value for price. And that's because this one's pretty good. Let's look at the specs on it. Okay, sample rate 48 kilohertz, that's good. In comparison, CD quality is 44.1 kilohertz. DVD quality, slightly better, 48 kilohertz, so that's the same as DVD. You can get higher sample rates in some studios. You'll sometimes see, oh, I don't know. Well, the other mic had 192, but you know what? To be honest, I think that 48 is absolutely fine. That is as good as you're going to need. Bitrate, 16-bit. That's the same as CD quality. That one, I'm not entirely. I'm pretty happy working with 16-bit most of the time. That other mic that we looked at, the Pro, goes up to 24-bit. That's kind of like the next step above 16. And I admit there's a difference in quality between 16 and 24, especially in the noise floor. But put it this way. Think of the best sounding CD that you've ever heard. That's recorded. That's playing back to you at 16-bit bit rate and 48 kilohertz sample rate. So if you can imagine that the best sounding CDs you've ever heard are about the same quality as this, then you're probably not going to be at a disadvantage if you don't have 24-bit. Because realistically, like I say, the noise floor is where you lose. Dynamic range is where you lose. And since the loudest sounds that you can hear in a digital audio environment have a kind of standard, the dynamic range, when you're talking about a bigger dynamic range, it's from that standard downwards to a more quiet level, not upwards. So with 16-bit sound versus 24-bit, 24-bit you're going to be able to have quiet parts. But like I say, CDs, if you've heard a really good CD recording, you know that 16-bit's going to work just fine for almost every project that everyone's going to be working on. Frequency response is good there. It's got a headphone amp, so obviously you can plug your headphones into it. This one, USB 1.1 works and 2.0 works. No word on whether or not 3.0 works. Okay, so that one's $100. If you're looking for a USB condenser mic and you're on a budget, this one here, the Yeti by Blue, is the one that seems to be most recommended these days. What's our next one? Our next one is the Spark Digital, and it says the world's first studio-grade condenser microphone to offer both USB and iPad connectivity. Well, that's because this one, not only can you plug it into USB, but it also works with the Apple connections. So you can go with the old 30-pin connector, or you can go with the Lightning. This one says USB 2.0 plus, which means I believe this will not work with 1.0 or 1.1, but it should work with 3.0. So that's a nice bonus. Frequency response, not quite as low as the Yeti or the Yeti Pro. It's only down to 26 Hertz. But realistically, 26 Hertz is such a low sound that's way deeper than the deepest male voice that you will ever be recording. So unless you're trying to record, I don't know, the low end of a super low note on a bass guitar or kick drum, then that's irrelevant. That's a great frequency response. Everything else seems to be pretty straightforward. Now this is the most expensive of the mics from Blue, and it's $200. So on Amazon right now it's $12 more than the Yeti Pro, and I think that's why I bought it, to be honest. I was looking at the specs of the Yeti Pro and the specs of the Spark. Most of the specs seemed fairly similar, and actually, now that I think about it, I believe the Yeti Pro was a lot more at the time. Now the Yeti Pro is slightly cheaper than the Spark, but at the time I think it was a lot more expensive. Anyway, the specs on the two of them are pretty similar, and we'll look at the features of this one in a minute once we open it up. Okay, moving on, we have our next one, the Nessie. We're starting to get into cheaper ones for those of you on a budget. Specs, 48 kilohertz, 16-bit, so that's good. It's only got one frequency response or one pickup pattern. This one goes USB 1.1 or 2.0, but probably not 3.0. And the Nessie retails for $94 today. The Snowball, I think this is a slightly older one. It says the world's first professional USB mic, so I assume that means it was an older one. The Snowball is cheap. It's only $60. And it works with USB 1.0 or 2.0. So yeah, obviously this was started production a while ago. And besides the Snowball, we have the Snowball Ice. And the difference between the two of them, I'm not sure. They are probably pretty similar because this one's $49, so it's comparable in price, very cheap. USB 1.0 or 2.0. Anyway, so you can see that there's lots of options out there. What else is on this page? Accessories, the Icicle. So this is kind of neat. This lets you plug a traditional microphone into the Icicle, and then goes from the Icicle into the laptop. So it has that mic preamp built into it. And then what are these other two things? The Radius, it's a shock mount, and the Ringer, it's a suspension mount. Just different mounts for your microphone. Okay, so that's all I really want to show you on the internet right now. The Basically, you can see that Blue itself has, I think we went through, what, 6 models there. It has a couple little tiny ones that you can plug into a USB key. You can look at the other manufacturers. You can look at Shure, Audio-Technica, Apogee, and whatnot. But look at Lauren's review article. Anyway, so there's lots of variety out there. Let's unpack the Spark Digital and see what it looks like. Okay, so let's open this up and see what we've got. I haven't actually opened this yet. Spark Digital studio grade microphone for iPad and USB. So you can see it takes the USB connector, 30 pin, setting up instructions. Okay, well, let's look at that in a minute. So looking at the cables that came with it, I know that this particular model comes with either 30 pin connector for Apple or the Lightning connector. So this one was the 30 pin, which is irrelevant to me because I'm not using either. And then this must hook up to the microphone. Maybe that's the, well, oh no, that'd be a headphone. Okay. And then here we have the USB version. Same thing, these are the connections that would go to the microphone, it appears. Let's dig further and find out. Oh. Okay, so this is pretty heavy. That looks kind of neat. So we have a stand that has a little bit of. Okay, so there's some padding at the bottom of the stand, the base of the stand, and a bit of padding there. Now I think if you've got this set up anywhere and you hit the table it's on, you're still going to get some noise, obviously. So that's not quite as fancy as a high-grade studio condenser mount, but that's all right. And here's our actual microphone. So, volume gain. Oh, so that's a combination, headphone volume or microphone gain. To mute, push. Okay, that looks kind of neat. Focus on, focus off. That would be, that should be the mic patterns. That's kind of neat. It's not light, that's for certain. And then this at the bottom, this must be where that plugs in. So this would seat like this. And does it screw in? Yes, okay. So you can actually screw it into place here. Sorry, went off camera there for a second. Okay. Oh, I see. And so you can actually point it in different directions if you needed to. I would assume most of the time you would have it sitting there so that you've got a left and right sound. I'll actually spin it. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'll put it this way. Depends on your pickup patterns. And of course the manual is going to show the, should show the different pickup patterns available in here somewhere. No, I won't go through that now. Anyway, so once this is set up, then you're going to be plugging into the bottom of it with that. And then your other end is going to go to your USB. And this, I presume, will take a headphone, 1/8 inch male headphone jack. Yes, it does. So that's how you're going to do your direct monitoring. Okay, so that looks pretty cool. It's got a nice feel to it. It's pretty heavy. Okay, so I think that's all that I need to cover today. So at least you know what USB microphones are about. You've seen one unpacked, know what options are out there. Again, check underneath the YouTube video in the text description, and you'll see some links I'll put there. I'll write up a blog post to accompany this video, which covers all this stuff that I've talked about. So I'll put a link to the blog post. I'll put a link to Lauren's article reviewing different USB microphones. I'll put links to a couple articles like preamp reviews and stuff like that, so you understand that more. And in a future recording tutorial, I will actually use this microphone and we'll give it a test run, put it to work. And basically, you know, these things are going to be, like I say, I haven't used one yet, but I kind of like this. It looks good. It feels very solid. It feels heavy, but it feels very solid. And based on the reviews of my friends who are studio professionals, this is going to meet the needs of a lot of people out there. Okay, so if you're a podcaster, if you're doing home studio recording, if you're a music student, audio student, if you're voiceover talent, stuff like that, this sort of microphone is going to be applicable to all of you. So you don't necessarily have to go and look at a $1,000 or $2,000 high-end studio condenser microphone, plus your preamps, plus your phantom power, plus some sort of interface, sound card, whatever. You know, something like this should get the job done at a very reasonable price. So we'll try that out very soon. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you want to check out some of my other tutorials and reviews, go to I'll put the link up here in just a second. My main website has a video index page listing all the different videos I've done. And if you want, follow me on Twitter, because that's where I release news when I put out new videos. And if you think this video has been useful to you, if you want to share it on some social media, I'd really appreciate that. Okay, thanks for watching, thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.